Welcome to Sports Spectrum, the sports and faith podcast that brings Jesus back into the conversation. Here's your host, Jason Romano.
This episode of the Sports Spectrum podcast with Seattle Mariners outfielder Denard Span is brought to you in part by Compassion International. Go to compassion.com/sports spectrum, $38 a month, sponsor a child, release a child from poverty. It's a wonderful way to minister, to serve, to teach your own kids about how to help someone in need. And Compassion does such a wonderful job at offering up these children from across the world and allowing you to pick and choose and pray about which child that you want to sponsor. And listen, my wife, my daughter, myself, we sponsor a 13-year-old boy from Haiti. It's the best $38 we spend every single month. And you can make that same difference by sponsoring a child through Compassion International. Go to compassion.com/sports spectrum, sponsor a child today. Today's guest on the podcast, Seattle Mariners outfielder Denard Span. Now, Denard was selected in the first round of the 2002 MLB Draft by the Minnesota Twins. Came out as an 18-year-old high schooler. 6 years later, in 2008, he made his major league debut in Minnesota against Kansas City, and we'll talk about that on this podcast. He played for Minnesota for 5 seasons, 2008 to 2012, and then went on to Washington, then to San Francisco. Then this year was traded to Tampa Bay, and then traded again in the middle of the season in May to Seattle. In 2014, Denard led the National League in hits. He led the American League in triples in 2009 and the National League in triples in 2013. He's a steady veteran. He's been there, and he's been solid really his whole career. He's been 10 years now in the major leagues. And again, he was traded May 25th of this year from Tampa to Seattle. It's the first time he was ever traded in the middle of a season. And I really wanted to talk to him about that because I don't think fans understand what it's like when a player gets traded. They just talk to player, or they just, root for players and see them get traded and okay, they're on the next team and here we go. But we're talking about lives, families. Uprooting from Tampa to Seattle is a big adjustment. So we'll talk to Denard about that. We'll also talk to him about his faith and even more his foundation, the Denard Span Foundation, which helps single-parent families. And so this is going to be a good one. We're in the middle of baseball season. We're at the AllStar Break, and Denard was gracious to spend a few minutes with us. So let's get right to it. This is Seattle Mariners outfielder Denard Span here on the Sports Spectrum podcast. Take a listen. Denard, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
It's great to talk to you. Now it's the All-Star Break, and we're talking to you here on the podcast. The Mariners are in a great position to make a playoff push, and you're red hot, hitting .351 in the month of July. Do you like the break as far as being an athlete? I mean, you've been around the game now for over a decade. Or is part of you saying, man, it's going so well at the plate, let's just keep this thing going?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, yeah. When you're playing well, you're like, man, the break, this break kind of coming at a bad time. But honestly, I think by this time of the season, I think everybody is ready for a little breather. We've been going hard since February in spring training, and now we've played 80 or 90 some odd games, and I think even the last week or so, I could tell some of us were just dragging a little bit and just ready for a break and ready for just so we can recharge our batteries and get ready for a second half push.
Now, you were traded to the Mariners from Tampa on May 25th. It's the third time that you've been traded, but it's the first time in season. And you go from Tampa, Florida to Seattle, Washington. I got to imagine, I mean, a lot of people, I've been around athletes for a long time, and a lot of people, I don't think understand just the toll that it takes on literally lifting your family up and moving from one city to another, especially across country like this. But how difficult was that for you and I know your wife, Ann, and your newborn baby, DJ? How hard was that for you to just pick up and move in season?
It was very difficult. It was something that, like you just mentioned, it was something I've never had to go through. I've seen it, with other players, get traded in the middle of the season. And one day you're playing for one team and the next day it's like literally you get traded and they want you there within 24 hours. And, it's like just a upside down, sort of experience. And, it was, other time other times that I got traded, it was during the off season. So I had plenty of time to let it sink in and prepare myself to get ready for that city. But, in season and with the young family, and on top of that, we were in Tampa, which is our home. It just, it just was difficult, but I was very thankful that Jerry DePoto, the GM of the Seattle Mariners, he gave me one extra day to report to Seattle. So, I remember having the conversation with him. He was like, "Can you come tomorrow?" And I'm like, I mean, I could come, but it just be a lot more difficult, with the 8-month-old and my wife and all that. So, but yeah, it'd been a whirlwind.
Give us a glimpse just from the human perspective of trying to find a place to live, trying to get your family out there situated. I mean, that's not an easy thing for anyone to deal with, much less you're trying to do a job and trying to focus on actually helping your team win games and produce. What is that like?
Yeah, I mean, I had to go ahead of my family. I went to Seattle and they met me out there, I think, a couple weeks later. So, the first week I was staying in a team hotel and I wasn't walking to the ballpark. I was Ubering to the ballpark and
right.
And just trying to fit in, trying to just transition the best I could. But just everything feeling like you just moved across the country, going, it's like, when you're a little kid, having to move across country and attend a new school and try to, figure out where you're going, which, where's your new classes at and who's, trying to learn the names of everybody. So it just was, it was a tough transition.
You married in January of 2017. Your little guy arrived in October. Tell us about life as a married man now and being a dad. So much has happened in the past couple of years. What has life been like from that perspective?
I don't even know where to start, to be honest. It's just totally different, man. Obviously, being a single man for, the first 12 years of my professional baseball career, all I had to do was worry about Denard. And, I was, I don't even like using the word selfish. It was me and I was ambitious. I was, trying to establish myself. My whole life was, surfaced around being the best, baseball player I could be. So, going from that to fast forward, getting married, realizing that now, I have to not only look after Denard, I have to look after Annie as well. And,
Yeah.
and she's dependent on me to be there for her emotionally, spiritually, and, just be there for her, what I mean? And it was a transition and, for me, but it's honestly, it's made me a better, man, better, a better baseball player. Just being able to come home and have a companion, to somebody that I can, know that is going to love me no matter what happened at the field. Same thing with my son as well. And, just be able to come home and talk life and just having somebody, having my other half, my better half, be able to just spend life and share life with is, just been the best thing ever for me. And then on top of that, the icing on the cake is the ultimate blessing that God blessed us with it. And our son, DJ, that has put, baseball, honestly, 2-3 notches down than what it was. I like I said, in my single life, baseball was probably, at the top of my list as far as priorities, and since being married and having a son, it definitely has put things, baseball really probably like I said 3 or 4 notches below, and so it's just been a blessing, man. Just being able to just have what God wants for me, and that's having a beautiful wife and a beautiful son, and living life the way He wants me to live it.
We're talking to Denard Span here, the Seattle Mariners outfielder, on the Sports Spectrum podcast. This is a faith in sports podcast, of course. So let's hear the faith side of things for you, Denard. Tell us your testimony, when you made Christ a priority in your life. When did that start for you?
You know what? I was actually born into the church. You know, my mom, she kept me in the church, kept me and my brother in the church, and so it was something that was always it's always been a part of me. My mom, like I said, just kept us there, but I think I always relied on her faith. Because she had a very, very strong faith, and being a kid, I leaned on her a lot, and I think it wasn't until I became a man and started going through my own trials and tribulations, mainly through just being away from home the first time ever during minor league baseball, and going through injuries and stuff like that. That's when I realized that I have to have my own faith, and I have to seek Him and have my own personal relationship with Christ. And I would say that was probably in my early 20s. I feel like I've had different levels or different just different stages of my growth with my faith, where as I've gotten older, I think I've gone through different things, and it's God getting my attention to just push me, or just get my attention to come closer to Him.
We've had many baseball players on this podcast, current and former guys, minor league guys, and they all say being intentional about their faith is so vital to staying sort of fed in the Lord, because the season is such a grind. How do you maintain that relationship with Christ during the long MLB season? And now obviously you have a partner there in your wife and your son. But how do you maintain that relationship during such a long season? You're on the road half the time. What does that look like for you?
I mean, I think you just used the right word right there, just trying to be intentional. It's very, very, very difficult, with our traveling, with our scheduling. But, Annie and I, we talk about it all the time as far as, we have to, find time, even when it seems like we don't have time to pray together, get in the Word, even if it's for, a couple minutes a day. Just making sure that we're staying connected with Him, you know what I mean? And that's the only way. And, we have, thank God, on Sundays we have baseball chapel,
Yep.
That we were able to come together in the locker room for, 20 minutes and get together and get a message. But, I think it like I said, just being intentional.
Recently, the Mariners had Faith and Family Day at Safeco Field in Seattle, where you participated and shared with the crowd. I know some of your teammates as well were a part of that. How important is that for you to be a part of something like that and share your faith on a larger scale? I'm sure you had 5,000-10,000 people there that stayed after the game. Tell me about that and why it was important for you to be a part of it.
I think it's very important. I mean, obviously the fans, they know Denard Span, the baseball player, and they come and watch myself and my teammates play. But I believe it's important that with the platform that God has given myself, that I make it known that who I really am. And it's not the Seattle Mariners or baseball player, whatever. It's I'm a man of God, I'm a Christ follower, and I go through the same, struggles that I'm sure that, everybody else goes through, but, just, being intentional and following Christ, that's where my faith and my strength comes from.
Did you get a lot of reaction from that, I wonder? Just from fans, maybe even from some players? Just kind of what is this about? Does it open up doors for you to be able to talk a little more openly about your faith?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think, there was a time in my life where I was a little bit more timid about, opening up and sharing. But I think as I've grown in my faith, that I feel comfortable in myself. But I think that, it's just important. I think it's important to me to clear the air, and I want people to notice, even without me telling, I want them to notice that there's something different about me.
You made your Major League Baseball debut April 6th at the age of 24, April 6th, 2008, by the way. And you were drafted out of high school at 18, which is so young. Now you're a veteran. You're 34. You're in your 10th season. Let's pretend like you're sitting alongside your 18-year-old and 24-year-old selves. We'll look at both of those areas. What would you say to them that maybe you wish you had known, maybe some advice, some life advice, but just what would you say to your younger self now that you've been in the league for over 10 years and what that's been like?
The devil's going to be busy. he's going to be busy. He's going to be attacking you from every angle. Yeah. So make sure you're the word again, be even more intentional. And honestly, that's what I experienced. I mean, I experienced just crazy things at a young age, and it was difficult, but it helped develop me into the man that I am today. And I'm thankful for going through those obstacles. But I would say, have your guard up, have your armor ready to go, because the devil's coming full-fledged at you.
A couple more questions here with Denard Span, the Seattle Mariners outfielder. I know near and dear to your heart is the Denard Span Foundation. The mission is to serve and empower single-parent homes. I personally come from a divorced home with an absent father, so I can relate to that single-parent life. Tell us about why you started the foundation and specifically why helping single-parent homes is so important to you.
In 2010, I played with a guy by the name of Orlando Hudson, and he had a foundation, but I think it was geared towards I want to say autism, but it was geared towards something else. But he had a charity event, and I just thought it was the most inspiring thing that I'd ever seen, and I think that's when it really first hit me. That I need to make an impact, but what can I do? I don't want to just do it, for cancer or just to do something. I had to do something where I could relate to, and something that that I feel like others go through as well, and that's when I realized right then and there, it was like it's got to be something with single parents and single mothers, because I experienced that firsthand, and seeing my mom trying to play mother and father, and make the most out of what the hand that she was dealt, and taking care of us. So that's kind of how it came, and I think I was maybe my second year in the major leagues at the time, and so I began just doing. I didn't quite have a foundation yet, but I was doing things in the community. In Minnesota, that's where it started, and I'd probably say maybe 3-4 years later, that's when the foundation kind of got off the ground, and we just started being more intentional.
I like that word. Tell us about the impact it's making, specifically how it's going to help these single families, and what if people want to donate. I know I'm going to give the website in a minute, but if people want to donate, like, where is that money going to? How is it specifically helping these single families?
Right now, we're working on. We have 3 programs that we're working on, and we realize that the things we're doing, obviously, it's not going to stop, or if anything, we're trying to empower, and we're trying to take the load off as much as we can from these single parents. But right now, the 3 programs that we're working on developing is trying to provide transportation for these single mothers. We have a grocery program where we go out and get them groceries and allow them to go to the grocery store and get food for them and their family. And also we're working on a scholarship program where we can give some money to help kids that are considering going to college.
It's really great. It's the Denard Span Foundation. You can find out more. You can donate and be a part of what he's doing at DenardSpanFoundation.org, DenardSpanFoundation.org. I wonder for you, we mentioned your son DJ earlier. I grew up with a father that wasn't around and then became a dad, and I know that was, I like that word intentional, but it was intentional for me to be a good dad to my daughter because I didn't have one growing up. I wonder for you, the absence of a dad, how did that affect you, and how does that affect you now in the way that you're parenting and, you're being a dad to your own child?
I'm gonna be honest with you, it's kind of scary because I didn't have that father figure. You know what I mean? Being a father, because it's like I don't, I didn't have that. So it's like, what, how can I, because I have other friends that, they grew up with dads, and, I see them, how they are with their kids. It's pretty much the same way their dad was with them. So it's like, I'm just going off of faith and realizing that, I've realized I'm going to make mistakes, and, I'm not going to be perfect, but I think as long as I'm constant and I'm there and I show him love, then I think that's going to make the world a difference. You know what I mean? But I am excited, just because I'm learning on the job, I guess you can say, and I getting this opportunity to give my son something that I didn't have, and so it's been fun, it's been exciting, and all those things.
Yeah, and the Bible talks about, we love because God first loved us. And I think if we can grasp a little bit of that love that God has for us and put it towards our children, I think that's really all it takes, is just that sort of unconditional love and being present in their lives. So I'm sure you'll do an awesome job with that. Just let's have some fun here. Let's wrap it up. Last couple minutes here. We'll do kind of a rapid fire, some baseball fun, and then we'll close it out with one final question. Let's do baseball from this perspective. What's your favorite moment as a baseball player?
Career was opening day for me here in not here, but when I in Tampa. Bases loaded, hit a triple, 3 RBIs, and we were down by 2, I believe, in the 8th inning, and just it was my first game, opening day in Tampa, my hometown. It was a crazy off season, and just being able to just have that moment in my hometown, in front of my family and friends and my son. It was a priceless moment.
And that's sort of your forte, that triples, right? You led the AL in triples in 09 and the NL in triples in 13. Yeah. So that was kind of nice too, right?
Yeah, it was, man. Yeah. See the old man running around the base.
That gray beard growing, right?
Yeah.
What's your favorite ballpark to play in? Obviously, aside from the parks that are your home park right now, like Safeco, what is your favorite ballpark to play in?
After being in the minor leagues for 6 years, I say all of them, to be honest, because I had my fair share of minor league ballparks. If I had to choose one, I don't know why Wrigley just came up. It's aside from the visiting clubhouse where it's very, very bad, outdated, but just the whole atmosphere, just being there, the fans are right on top of you. Obviously they've been playing a lot better the last couple of years, and it's just a fun atmosphere. Whenever you're in those old stadiums, I think for me it hits me. It's like, I remember, being a kid and watching my favorite players on the same field. Remember coming home and watching, Sean Dunston and Andre Dawson and Ryan Sandberg, play on this same Wrigley field, and just me being able to play on that field also in the same way in Fenway.
Athletes are such creature of habit. Obviously, most humans are creatures of habit. So what is something that you always do before a game? What's something that that's sort of a habit that you have to do before every game?
I usually, like my routine.
Yeah. Like, is there a routine that you stick with? It's got, like, I got to have this food, or I got to eat it at this time, or get a nap in, or anything like that?
I usually try to eat around the same time, and then I try to use the bathroom around the same time. I use the bathroom around the same time, and I always have my headphones on. I always, listening to, I have like just a little playlist that I'll listen to. I'll start off a little slow with a little slower music, and then, the closer we get to game time, the tempo picks up on the beats.
Denard, how about the favorite Bible verse that you have? What is a Bible verse that's been speaking to you a lot lately?
Okay. I would have to say this is probably me and my wife's favorite Bible verse at the moment, and it's from John 15:5. It says, I am the vine, you are the branches. if you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing.
Why is that verse so important to you?
I mean, because other than it being self-explanatory, I think it's saying that, as long as as we are the branches and he's the vine, that as long as we stay connected with him, then, we're going to bear his fruit. We're going to speak, as him. We're going to act as him. And, everywhere we go, we're going to be of him. So, just him being the source, and him being rooted inside of us. Like I said, it goes back to just being intentional and staying connected to him. And if we do that, then, everything else around us will shine, and we'll be the light that he's called us to be.
Denard, last question. I really appreciate you spending this time with us here on the podcast. In this season of life, especially in the last couple years, as we talked about earlier, so much has changed as far as you being now a married man and being a dad. What have you been learning from the Lord during this season of life? What has God been teaching you?
I would say the word trust. That's kind of been Annie and I's word. It seems like it just keeps coming up. This whole last year and a half, to be honest. It just seems like whenever we're doing a devotional or we're reading something from the Bible, the word trust or something that has to do with trust comes up, and with being traded twice, and having DJ and wondering how the heck we're going to move from Tampa to Seattle, and what we were unsure about how the season was going to unfold before the season started, and it seemed like everything we read it was just God speaking to us and just tell us, just go forward, be obedient, and trust, and he will guide us.
He is Denard Span, Seattle Mariners outfielder. Again, his foundation, all the information can be found at DenardSpanFoundation.org. It's been fun catching up with you, Denard, getting to know you, and look forward to having you back on again sometime, and wish you nothing but the best the rest of this season. Thanks for joining us.
No problem. I appreciate you guys having me and my wife, Annie.
And we do thank Denard Span, Seattle Mariners outfielder, for joining us here on the Sports Spectrum podcast. Denard is red hot right now, hitting .351 in the month of July as the Mariners look to stay in the hunt for a playoff berth. And we thank Denard for joining us and sharing his story of faith, his story of his foundation for single-parent homes. Again, for more on his foundation, simply go to DenardSpanFoundation.org, DenardSpanFoundation.org. You can also follow Denard on Twitter at ThisIsDSpan, and on Instagram, simply with his name at Denard Span. So we appreciate him. We appreciate you for listening and joining us, and we appreciate Compassion International for sponsoring this podcast. $38 a month, the best $38 you'll spend every month, and you're releasing a child from poverty. You're providing a child with hope by sponsoring at Compassion International. Now you can go to compassion.com/sportspectrum. Click on the child, maybe pray about it, talk to your family, then click on the child that you want to sponsor, and go ahead and make a difference in a child's life. $38 a month. Go to compassion.com/sportspectrum and sponsor a child today. We thank you so much for joining us here on the podcast. One thing I'd love for you guys to consider doing, maybe go to your phone or go to your computer, screenshot this podcast, and then share it on social media, on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram. Let people know that you've been listening to this podcast, that it's out there. And then if you'd really like to go further, go to iTunes, Apple Podcasts, and leave a review. Those reviews help bring more people, bring more awareness to the podcast, and help more people hear these stories on the intersection of sports and of faith. If you have any questions or any ideas for guests, you can email them to me directly, jason@sportspectrum.com. You can also find us, like I said, on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Just search Sports Spectrum. Every podcast is also found at our YouTube channel. Also, when you search Sports Spectrum, or everything that we do, every piece of content that's available is over at sportspectrum.com, including a daily devotional as well as all of these great stories on the intersection of sports and faith. Go to sportspectrum.com and check them all out. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you next time. Have a great rest of your day. This is the Sports Spectrum Podcast.